This is the Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino, and tonight I'm joined by James and Joe as we once again cover all things Celtic. James, first international break of the season and a short break for Celtic after a brilliant start to the campaign, but did the break come at a good time for us?
Some and some, some of the new signings, it gives them time to get on the training pitch with Brendan Rodgers, learn the systems, learn how it all works and comes together, and use that to get into the games coming up. We've got some of the boys away. It was good for Engels to get some time to make his debut for Belgium. He was carrying a suspension because he had a booking carried over from youth, which is a weird rule that should be disbanded, I think. And then, there's the usual thing you get with internationals, which is risk. Alistair Johnson for Canada, coming off with a hammy early, kind of maybe through the first half, I think, for one of their games. Sounded more precautionary, but it's more risk than I like. And I thought some good tests for Anthony Ralston. I'm well on record as being a big fan, and I just don't understand. He's a whipping boy for a lot of things, and there's easier players to whip in the Scotland team than Tony Ralston. Giving away a penalty, but still managing to kind of show up and set up a goal with McTominay, was it? And then playing good enough yesterday that he's boy's marking this to go off. But it's some and some. If it was up to me, would I have it in Ash football? Maybe not. If you're looking at Celtic first, then nah.
No, but it's here to stay, and players that are pushing themselves, Joe, they want to play at the top level, and international football's definitely amongst that. I'll give a wee roundup. There was 11 Celtic players or 11 first team players away on international duty, and I'll round it up just shortly. But in terms of what Celtic are doing or we're doing, Joe, the momentum was good. We were flying 5 wins out of 5, cuffing Rangers 3-0 before the break, and it was a shame to lose that momentum, wasn't it?
Yeah, we couldn't have started any better form-wise. Going through all those games in the league without even conceding a goal. Everyone's given Schmeichel testament, but really, the defence, the other teams weren't really even creating a chance against us. So, yeah, couldn't ask for a better start. We'll know on Saturday if it was a good thing or not having that break. I'm sure guys like Callum McGregor were probably in some way looking forward to it, given this is very new to them, having a week and a half off during the season. So yeah, I think it's definitely, we'll see on Saturday how good that break's going to be for them. But yeah, a lot to look forward to. We've got new signings, we've got a lot of potential in the squad that, a lot of talent that we'll yet to unearth at this moment in time. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next few weeks to see what a lot of these guys can bring.
Definitely, it's a good chance as well. I know the players get a few days off, but it's a good chance for guys like Luke McCowan and Alex Bailly. They were obviously back at Lennoxtown in general. Good chance for them to settle in. As James mentioned, Darnay Engels was off on international duty, as was, according to my notes, Nathan Trusty, who I don't know who that is, but Austin Trusty, who was away with the USA. So they were away on international duty, and as I say, we'll cover that just shortly. James, what about the time that this afforded to likes of Luke McCowan though and Alex Bailly? Could be really valuable for them.
Huge, what we've seen since the start of this season is that the players that Celtic have had for quite some time now, under Rodgers in particular, know this system like the back of their hand. So it took them a bit of time to get it. So it's obviously there's quite a lot of technicality to it. So the more time these guys can get directly with Rodgers and his coaches at Lennoxtown, the better.
Joe, as I mentioned, we went into the break having hammered Rangers 3-0. We'd also broken the transfer record with the signing of Darnay Engels. What's your general optimism levels for the weeks and the month ahead? It's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. I feel like I've been here before in a lot of ways because it's a very favourable draw for the Champions League. I'm sure we'll go on in a bit more detail, but the Champions League draw is favourable, and it could have been so much worse for us in terms of teams that we're up against, teams that we actually got home and away. A lot of fans are looking at it saying, these are the number of points that should be the target, and a lot of them are saying along the higher end of playoffs, potentially. Some people are saying top 8, which I think is ridiculous.
Top 2.
Yeah. So I think it's a case of waiting and seeing. As I say, I've been here before. I feel that we tend to write off teams that we've never heard of very quickly. I'm sure Young Boys will be a really difficult game. I think if we were to draw them in a playoff in the Champions League qualifier, we would be dreading it. Slovan Bratislava, again, on paper, you're thinking you would back Celtic all day, but it's the first game in the campaign. It's going to take a lot of these new guys to get up to speed straight away for that game. That might be what is required of us to beat Slovan Bratislava, hopefully not. But yeah, it'll be an interesting few weeks and months. League-wise, very happy. Europe, I am not in the overly confident stage, but I'm slightly optimistic, I will say.
Your European glass is kind of half full, but also a bit empty.
Yeah, go with that.
I think I've mentioned that in recent times I've done the Champions League draw show with Asim, and a lot of comments were like, calm down, you two. Just rein it in a wee bit and lower your expectations. And I understand that, Celtic at the moment, based on recent European performances, haven't earned the right to be confident or overly confident of beating anybody. But I think at the same time, you can also get excited about it. I think there's lots to look forward to there. And what we'll do, we'll keep our powder dry on the European stuff. We'll catch some of that in the listener's question. There's a really good question regarding that. James, did the break come at a good time for Brendan Rodgers? It's been a manic summer for him on and off the park, tour of the USA, everything that comes with the transfer window, all the many questions that he faced before and after every game there at the start of the campaign, getting that big win against Rangers and all the pressure that comes with that. Will he have been glad of just a couple of days downtime after the start he had?
Yeah, as much as he could get anyway. I mean, we've discussed in the past, he's overloaded. His role is overloaded at the moment due to others not being able to do their role and others not being in position to do a role. So if I was him, I think where I'd be spending my time is getting people in positions, making sure that the board and the football department are aligned in terms of what positions we need to fill, be that head of recruitment, head of scouting, changes in scouts and locations, whatever it may be that makes up a modern European structural change. Then spending the time with Michael Nicholson to get, they must be at that stage already, I would hope. And now it is right, who's available and who is good enough for the job that we need done.
When do you think that planning should happen? So obviously we've talked about the various hats that Brendan Rodgers has had to put on and the juggling that he's had to do in recent weeks. When of a season, because everything's busy. The summer window's busy. The January window's busy. You're now heading into a European campaign. It's busy. Christmas, New Year. When is it not busy? When should Brendan Rodgers sit with the chief exec and map out what the structure looks like?
I mean, I suppose it's one of those things, it shouldn't need to be done. It should have already been in place, but we are where we are. So when Mark Lawwell goes last January, gave his notice last January, February, I think it was, or this January, February 2024, then that's the right time to be going and say, not to, I mean, I said, do not replace him now, change the structure, get that right, and then go about hiring the personnel for that. But Rodgers, I would be 100% sure he said, don't bother me until May. I've got a really heavy run in here. I've got the boys firing and we're going to push and we're going to win. And he did that. He could not be distracted by structural things at that time, so I can understand why we're sitting now. But as soon as that final whistle goes in the Scottish Cup final, now obviously Rodgers is due a break, and we didn't do that much in the transfer window until the later stage. So as soon as Rodgers was back at his desk would have been the time for me. But it seems that we just didn't. I suppose it's too late then for that transfer window, but it's not too late for January, for next year, and so on and so on. So again, he's maybe just put his focus on getting the players in, but I think some work could and should have been done then in terms of what positions, and then just giving that to Nicholson and others to say, go and get the personnel. I've told you what I need.
I think to be forward thinking as well, though, I think even just as a business, I think you always need to be forward thinking and review things constantly. I think the way that Celtic have been structured over the last, I mean, for as long as I can remember, it's always been very, very basic. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of depth to it. I mean, whether we were to go down the route of having a director of football, having this basic model of manager, head of recruitment that seemingly, to be honest, before Lee Congleton came in, it didn't really exist. There was a sort of chief scout, but it didn't really seem there was a real clear structure in place as to how do we sign players. Whether it was or not, it wasn't very well documented. So I think that process always needs to be ongoing. Now, as you say, whether the time to actually take action and do that, I don't think there's ever really a bad time for it. I think there's ever really a perfect time for it, because post-season you're already thinking ahead to next summer and windows, etc. So the same with the transfer stuff as well. Engels could have been a target for 3 months and we just don't know. Right? Engels has been rumoured for a while, but there could be a case of just taking action near the time. So I don't know if there is a perfect time for it, but as a business and as a club, if we want to go for actually progress on all fronts, we need to monitor that all the time. And it just seems like it just seems very, very reactive to things that are going wrong. And, if all it takes is a bad window, there's fan backlash. Okay, guys, I'm going to go. That's the only way it seems that there's ever a change. It doesn't seem it's really based on anything other than, when there's a bit of noise.
Yeah. I think there's always got to be prioritising. And this is in recruitment and the structure behind recruitment. It's got to be right up there near the top of the list. You're recruiting footballers at Celtic and all clubs really to different extents is the most important thing. Getting the right players in the park, and ultimately, you've mentioned that Celtic to a huge extent, they are a business, so they've got to make sure they're getting the right players in the park, but also the right players that over time will then make us money. That's just how the model works.
And our turnover's really high as well, so it's like that is going to be a priority, because we're not like a Man City that's going to have a core squad. We're going to the life cycle of a Celtic player that we want to sign to be our best player is typically 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
So I think the life cycle of a successful Celtic player, and O'Reilly, it's about his time. 2.5 seasons is about right. So there's a priority in terms of that, absolutely getting that structure right. But Brendan Rodgers' main priority is winning games of football. It's got to be. You're the manager of the club. That's your thing. So you can understand why the timing's not been right for different reasons. But he did mention, what was it, after the St Mirren game, the game before the Rangers won, he said, we've got our targets. I'm confident we'll get them, but after that, things need to change. And now is after that, and I'd like to think maybe the week we're in, or even last week during the break, him and Michael Nicholson got some time together to sort things out. Anyway, we'll see how that plays out. Joe, Luke McCowan, he was our last signing of the window, arrived late on the Friday night. What part do you think he'll have to play this season and beyond? And I think you believe it's quite a smart signing.
I think it's a smart signing. I mean, I've mentioned it before, and it's becoming more and more of a challenge for Celtic. That I think in Europe, especially this domestic player stuff, I think it's a bonus signing in a lot of ways, because we don't really need to. He's not taking up someone else's place in the squad. So I think definitely in that sense, yeah, it's a smart signing. I think above all that as well, I think he's a really good player. From what I've seen, I think I've not watched a great deal of him. I've seen a highlight montage of his goals, and I mean some of the goals he scored for Dundee are absolutely superb. Against teams that we play every week.
Was it better than your goal at the weekend?
No, not quite.
I had to get that in, James. Go on.
But yeah, I watched the one game in particular. I watched him against Rangers, the fourth attempt at getting the game on at Dens Park against Rangers, and given the conditions, given it's a very, very difficult pitch to play on, it seems at the best of times, quite heavy, he was still able to play football, dictate the play against a team who on paper should be streets ahead of Dundee. Thankfully not that night, but anyway, from what I've seen of him, he looks really good. A really technically gifted player. I honestly thought we should have signed him in June, but I don't think there was any real reason to stop us from signing in June, given cash, apparent that with so much cash in the bank. I don't think it was ever really a case of letting someone move on. I think we'd enough in our bank to I think we should have signed him regardless of the circumstances of the squad. So yeah, I'm pleased with the signing. I thought he did well when he came on at the weekend. Looked against Rangers, really, really calm, really composed. And going forward this season as a squad player, first and foremost, he's not going to be a starter straight away. But we've got a really heavy load of games. We can make 5 subs now, which historically, way back, that was never really going to happen. So yeah, I'm pleased with the signing, and yeah, I'm looking forward to see what he can do.
James, Celtic, as we know, play with 3 in the midfield, and at the moment, certainly up till recently, McGregor, Hatate, O'Reilly. That absolutely was set in stone. You've now got 6 players playing for those positions. It's McGregor and Hatate, it's Bernardo, it's Engels, and it's McCowan. How many is that?
5, 4.5.
4.5/5. Hatate moved on, as we know, and we don't know if that created the space. Holmes is the other guy who's on the periphery. I would say in order, in terms of who starts, it's McGregor and Hatate, and then it's really between Bernardo, Engels and McCowan to see who can scrap out for that third place. I think Holmes is out the loop, but Luke McCowan won't be looking at it like that. He won't see himself as 5th or 6th choice. He'll see himself as a guy that wants to come here and start. He was speaking at Celtic Park today, and I've not heard the press conference just yet, but I've seen his early comments from when he signed, and he's delighted with the move. He's a Celtic fan and he's buzzing with that. But it goes beyond that. He's not just here to say, well, that's my work done now, I'm a Celtic player. He wants to be a successful Celtic player and one that plays games.
He seems to have a brilliant mindset, without being arrogant. He said, I've done enough to get here, and that's just the start, essentially. Now I reset and I go again in terms of, right, I've got to the club, and now it's a matter of getting onto the bench, which I've achieved, and now it's a matter of getting onto the pitch first to the first 11. But I think the biggest thing we're going to see this season, we know the number of fixtures we play, irrespective of the expanded Champions League, which just adds more. There's so many games to be played. I think you're going to end up with Rodgers being able to pick any 3 from those 6. I know home is, kind of slightly out the picture, but that's given him the incentive to put himself in the picture and give us a genuine, 2x3 midfield. And it could be on any given day, whatever suits. This guy needs a rest, this guy needs a bit of game time, and they're all able to play. I think certainly the 5 out with home are all able to play first team right now. And I think home, when it comes to League Cup games and things like that, I think he'll be playing his way. And I want to see him get in there and do well. I think there's something in with home, and I think that's exemplified by the fact that we didn't move him out even on loan in the window. Part of the reason I think we didn't get McCowan until late is one of the main priorities was just getting the bulge out of the squad. There was 14 players out of that squad in the summer, so that was a real priority for the recruitment team. They did that, and they did that very successfully, and hats off to them for that. And that creates the space. Iwata moving on disappointingly, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. That created the direct space because of the Champions League squad to bring McCowan in. So I think there's logic to it, as much as it'd be great to get him in earlier and be further up to speed. I don't have any real gripe about that.
No, not right. I think the most important thing is getting the right players, whether it's the start or the end. It's preferable to get them at the start, but getting them overall is the main thing. You mentioned 14 players. It's actually 18 players that moved on, 12 permanently and 6 on loan, guys like Kwon and otherwise. And I think it was so important for Brendan Rodgers just to clear that bloating of the squad and allow him a far smaller and more intimate group to work with.
Don't forget, Liam Shaw's still Celtic centre midfield option. He's still kicking about.
Is he on loan somewhere?
No, he's still at Celtic.
I think he's at Thorneywood or something like Belgrade Juniors. Anyway, so we'll see, but there's real opportunity for Luke McCowan to, as I say, not just be a Celtic player on paper, to be a guy that comes and makes an impact at Celtic. Before we continue with the rundown just of the international Celts, as I say, just a quick whiz through the 11 guys that were away. A birthday shout out, James.
Engels, I think it was yesterday. So what a few weeks for the boy.
Not Engels, more important than Engels. Our very own Myth. So it was Myth's birthday at the weekend as well. I don't really know what age Myth is. He's somewhere between 19 and 45, something like that. But brilliant guy, obviously a huge part of what we do. So happy birthday to Myth. Hope you had a good one at the weekend. We'll see him again next week. In terms of the 11 guys that were away on duty, so just a quick run through. Tony Ralston, as you mentioned, James, he played the full 90 minutes in both of Scotland's games. Unfortunately, both were defeats to Poland and Portugal. And as we know, James Forrest and Greg Taylor had already dropped out of the squad. Calmac, that's him done, so he won't return. And hopefully he's enjoyed this first experience, Joe, of just kind of freshening up and getting himself set for the next part of the campaign. For Ireland, Adam Ida started and their 2-0 loss to England, but Liam Scales, I think surprisingly for many, was an unused sub. They play Greece tonight at the Aviva in Dublin, so we'll see if both players feature in that one. Arne Engels, James, he made his Belgium debut on Friday night against Israel. He got 18 minutes there, but as you also say, he's now suspended for the game tonight against France due to a suspension he picked up with the under-21s. In Japan, Maeda played and scored in their 7-0 win over China. They're up against Bahrain on Tuesday. Reo Hatate is with the squad but hasn't played any minutes so far, and again he'll be looking to put that right before he comes back. Kasper Schmeichel continues to play for Denmark. He's got now 107 caps, incredible. 2 clean sheets this week against Serbia and Switzerland as they recorded 2-0 wins in each. He's no longer the captain. He's been replaced by Pierre Højbjerg, who was at Spurs for the last few years and now.
What a downgrade that is.
He's now
Jeez.
Speaking of goalies, Vojami Sinisalo, he's away with the Finnish squad and was on the bench against Greece, but he didn't come on Saturday night. They play England on Tuesday night, so we'll see if he gets any minutes there. Alistair Johnson, it's obviously a concern, James. He played for Canada. It was just a friendly, but he was subbed off after 23 minutes in their 2-1 win over the USA with a hamstring issue, and it remains to be seen just how serious that one is. Austin Trusty, not to be confused with Nathan Trusty, who knows, was an unused sub in the same game, USA v Canada. But they've got another friendly against New Zealand on Tuesday night, and again he'll be hoping for minutes. And finally, and as a fringe player as such, Louis Palma, he started for Honduras in their 4-0 win over Trinidad and Tobago, and they play again against Jamaica late on Tuesday night. Joe, anything amongst that lot catch your attention? Obviously Ralston and AJ maybe swapping out for each other when they come back to Celtic duty, and Kasper Schmeichel, 107 caps, is some going for him.
Yeah, it's great for Kasper Schmeichel. It shows you the calibre of signing that we've made, despite his age. He's a goalkeeper as well, so it doesn't overly matter as much. The only 2 games, I watched the 2 Scotland games. Again, I'm agreeing with James. I thought Ralston, he gets a lot of unfair criticism
from Neil McCann,
from Twitter in general. But I mean, it's the same with the Euros. There's guys in that squad that should be getting a lot more criticism, and like Andy Robertson's been.
Do you think he gets a free pass for Scotland?
Yeah, 100%.
So
100%.
So does John McGinn.
I think if you're watching that blindly, in the sense of you don't have the clubs next to them, you wouldn't overly be able to tell. I think some flashes of decent stuff, but decision making is just really, really poor. If it was a Celtic player, I'd be really frustrated by. So I think he gets a lot of unfair criticism based in his circumstances at Celtic and his circumstances playing in Scottish football. I think it tends to be quite a cheap shot, easy target for me. But I watched those two games. I thought he'd done okay and gave away the penalty, but there you go, playing against two decent oppositions. I watched the Ireland-England game as well. He didn't look great.
He wasn't given anything to go for, but was he? He'd won, maybe, but nothing was direct for him.
Nah. And I think the nature of that game, again, you're playing against a much better side. So, a lot of optimism. Like, guys are getting minutes. Some guys probably that you wouldn't, like Rio Hatate, I think it tends to be that his game load needs to be managed a bit more carefully than others, given his injuries in the past. So him maybe not playing over the two games maybe isn't the worst thing. But yeah, look, not good enough to get called up for their squads. Arne Engels getting in the Belgium squad, given looking at the guys he's competing against, shows you that it's a really good signing. So yeah, can only do these guys benefit, I'd like to think. So yeah, I'm glad they've all been called up and they're contributing in some way.
I think De Bruyne came out and gave a bit of a kind of hat nod to Engels, saying, boy for the future.
Okay, and that's good to hear. And I think any guy going off to play international football, as we know, some fans, maybe yourself, James, aren't mad keen on the international stuff.
In the middle.
But the players themselves get a boost. Of course you do. To get called up for your country, to be recognised as one of the best players in your country, it's a big thing for these guys, and I'd like to think it raises their profile certainly, but also gives them confidence to come back and bring that to Celtic. For Arne Engels, and obviously his inclusion in their squad was announced the same day he signed, wasn't it? Was it the Friday? So you can't say it's linked to anything he's done for Celtic so far, but the hope is he performs for Celtic and continues to be in the squad amongst the various or the riches that Belgium have got on offer, and that's only got to be a good thing. James, any final comments on the international stuff before we take a break?
Glad it's over.
How
Bring back my Celtic.
Okay, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll crack on with this week's listeners' questions. Welcome back, folks. As always, we're keen to cover as many listeners' questions as we can here on the show. And if you want to send us your questions for a future episode, then I'll let you know exactly how you can do so at the end of this section. But what we'll kick off this week with a question from Martin Heaney, who raises an interesting point about our chances of qualification to the next stage of the Champions League.
I feel as if it's not really being commented on how vital goal difference could be during the competition. We hear a lot of talk on you could qualify with 8 points, 9 points, 10 points, whatever. However, I'd be very surprised at the end of the 8 games if you don't have quite a few teams actually grouped together, be it, for example, on 10 points. At which point, then surely goal difference is going to become vital. And I think that's when the draw that Celtic have got, in so much as we've avoided the likes of Real Madrid away, Paris Saint-Germain away, or possibly even drawing them at home, could be crucial, because any other teams that are drawing these teams may well find themselves, as we know, on a potential 5-0 hiding, which is then going to really play into our advantage, as I say, at the end when we're looking at goal difference. Anyway, just a wee thought. Be curious to hear what you think.
So as you heard there, Martin talked of how tight it could be to qualify and how big a part goal difference could play. What do you think?
Yeah, it's something that wasn't really on my mind. I think it's a really interesting way to look at it, in that not only have you got a kind of a draw you would like, others have got a draw they really would not like. And I never really thought about that dimension of it. So I think the key thing for us, first and foremost, is obviously points on the board. But I do feel that Rodgers is getting the team up to a point where, that 3-0 against Rangers could have been 6 easy. And I think there's no more game management. Once you've got the tie resolved and you've won the tie, just keep going. And that's where we'll get our goals. But like the question says, it's the negative that's going on the teams that we're going to be coming up against as well. So, but it is Celtic in Europe, so that can go against you as well as for you.
That always plays its part. Joe, just a refresher before I come at you for the next question. So the campaign kicks off next Wednesday, the 18th of September. It's a home game against Slovan Bratislava. We then play Dortmund away, Atalanta away, Leipzig at home, Bruges at home and Dynamo Zagreb away, all before Christmas. And we then return in the new year with a game against Young Boys of Bern at home before finishing off with an away tie against Aston Villa. Joe, those second, third and fourth games that I mentioned, Dortmund, Atalanta and Leipzig, they're tough ones, aren't they? But to Martin's point, they're not Man City, PSG, Bayern in terms of what the impact could be on goal difference.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. They are games, I think, that, as I say, they're favourable given who we could have got. I think there's two ways of looking at this, because I agree with Martin. I think that, you know, we are avoiding a big hitter that could be going all out, and, you know, like Real Madrid, Man City, that they're capable of scoring a lot of goals against any team, never mind a team like us who have got a minimal budget compared to them. I think the difference with this competition as well, though, is that when it gets to Game 7 and Game 8, typically this scenario in the previous format was that in Game 5 and 6, the big teams do their business early on and they sort of put their kids on the last two games. This time round, they're actually going for it in every single game. Every game is of somewhat importance. Mm-hmm. So there is actually more of a danger, even though we are playing against a Dortmund, we are playing against a Leipzig, who on paper are nowhere near as good as a Man City or Real Madrid. They are going into those games thinking not just win, they are thinking probably in the same way as us, that we want to minimise how many goals potentially we could get beat by. They're wanting to score as many as they can, because let's face it, on paper they're probably more than capable of doing a bit of damage on us, despite it being an easier tie than perhaps others. I think that goal difference thing is really applicable to them as well. So I'd really done a few games which I think could be a bit of a ropey journey for us, but just hoping we get no injuries and we give ourselves the best chance.
Yeah, and you know, I wouldn't grumble about the draw at all. It's been very favourable towards Celtic. It's 8 games that we can certainly compete in. We should win a few of them, and some that middle section I mentioned of that 2, 3 and 4, Dortmund, Atalanta and Leipzig, they're the 3 biggest challenges, and then you face a Premier League team at the end of the mix with Aston Villa. There's nothing easy in there, and people talk about, you know, is this more of a Europa League draw? These teams are here on merit. They're in the Champions League, including ourselves, because they've done something, they've achieved something in the season past, and they've earned the right to be at the top table. But James, there's no doubt that, I mean, it's an obvious thing to say, but the opening section for Celtic is so crucial. We should go and beat Slovan Bratislava from what I know, and it's not a lot, but I think based on what they're doing just now, they've suffered domestically. They get beat 5-0 at home in their last fixture. Celtic are at home. We should be going all out for the win there, and if you manage to get that positive result, it gives you at least something on the board before you go and face arguably 3 games where you could come out with 0. Dortmund, Atalanta and Leipzig, and there wouldn't be any huge shame in that. You'd maybe hope to get something against Leipzig at home, but going away to Dortmund, who were last season's Champions League finalists, were they?
Yeah.
Yep. And Atalanta, who are the current Europa League holders, facing them in their own backyard, you're not expected to win, are you?
No, I mean, I think what you've got in those 3 teams, and interestingly they're clumped together like that, is those are all 3 clubs that Celtic should be aspiring to in terms of European regular game time, as in regularly performing well in Europa, like Atalanta, or always in the Champions League and doing well. Leipzig have, you know, done really well in the years past. Dortmund obviously always there and thereabouts, finalists last year, albeit I would say Ulster and finalists. But they're 3 great challenges for that reason alone. The first game, you know, that's a game we should win on paper, but you know, the thing we've always got, much like in the Rangers game, is I don't think we've ever had a more prepared manager. You know, Rodgers sweats this stuff and he'll be all over it to make sure we're ready for that, because a packed Celtic Park, European night, 3 points on the board and a couple of goals on the board, that's you off to a flyer, and then you're going to the 3 games in a row, which are the real challenges. You know, if we cause any trouble in those games to any of those 3 teams, and we pick up even 3 points from those 3 games, we're in a really, really strong position.
Yeah, I see them as real bonus points.
Yep.
But, you know, Celtic will be going all out to prove something. You say Rodgers sweats this stuff, no more so than he sweated against PSG and Barcelona when we get absolutely hammered 5-0 and 7-0.
I would say on that.
But that was then, this is now. Is that what you're
It
saying?
wasn't even this is now. He'd been trying to get Celtic to move up the rafters, get in. And I'm not saying Celtic necessarily had the financial clout to do so at the time, but he was putting the structures. I mean, that PSG game, he was putting like a structure of playing out for the back with guys that just weren't either ready for it or able for it.
We were 1-0 up, by the way.
Eh?
We were 1-0 up.
How did it end?
What won? PSG?
PSG were actually a goal up. That was the funny thing about it.
Was that away from? Did we not get beat 5-0 at home?
We 5-0 at home. We were 1-0 up.
Tony
away.
Ralston and stuff like that. And Ralston was, 17 or something at the time? You know, it was the right manager, the right strategy, the wrong players, the wrong level of budget for squad. We're night and day from that now.
Do you agree with that, George? Do you think we're far better prepared this time around?
I think so, because, I mean, I think it's easy to look back with nostalgia. A lot of players, I mean, for me, Lustig was finished after Rodgers' first season, if I'm being honest. Great servant to Celtic, but we were so, every season it was replace, get a new left, get a new right back, and we seemed to sort of limp on in that area. I'm maybe over exaggerating, but in Europe we seemed to be limping on in that area every year. We signed a new right back every year to try and compete, and it never really worked out. I think now, because we were so, there was such a brick wall for how much we could actually spend to improve in someone in that area. I mean, remember Castagna we were linked to before, and we somehow get priced out.
Rodgers wanted you.
Signings like that would have maybe took us up to that next level. Now it seems like the limit is just stretched ever so slightly, that we can spend ever so slightly more on a player to make us better. So I do agree with you in that sense, but also I do think that the other teams have got better. So I think there was a need to do that to try and stay relatively competitive. We're better than we are, don't get me wrong, but I think your Man City's, Real Madrid's, I even think like your Atalanta's, Dortmund's, they've got more spending power, and you know they're going to be better as well. So I think it'll wait and see how it goes. But yeah, football's changed so much since then.
I do think Brendan Rodgers personally seems in a really good place. I've said that despite all the noise and the negative noise over the last 4 or 5 weeks about transfers that hadn't yet arrived. I think he's just seemed very comfortable, you know, within his role at this moment in time, second time around at Celtic. And I do believe he's been backed. You know, you could argue we're maybe a striker light, maybe a winger light, but the priority positions have been addressed, and centre half and left back and another midfielder with O'Reilly going out, absolutely, you know, were the priorities, and we seem to have done some pretty smart business. So I think we're in a good place. But I think, you know, again, just to stress, it is so important that if we are going to lose to Dortmund, lose 2-1 and not 6-0, for example. Same applies for Atalanta and anything else. And if we can grab a few goals against Slovan Bratislava and others at home, then we could be in a pretty decent position. So, straightforward question, as a kind of spin-off from Martin's own comments, will we qualify? Will we finish in the top 24?
Yes.
Maybe.
Ooh.
I'm going to need a yes or no.
Go on, yes.
Go on then, it's a Monday.
I'll stick a header or go for it.
I think yes as well. I genuinely think yes. Obviously, you're a wee bit on the fence, Joe. I'm going to put a confident yes. I think Celtic should be strong enough to go and finish at least in the top 24, and we'll see what it takes us. The next question 2, that comes to us via Twitter this week with both Sandy Reid and Old Bamboo. Don't think that's his real name, James. Asking a similar question on Twitter, so I've rephrased it here. Question is, with the Champions League opener in mind against Slovan Bratislava, do we think we'll see any experimentation against Hearts this weekend with a view to getting the likes of Arnie Engels, Austin Trusty, Alex Bailly or Luke McCowan in the starting lineup? Your thoughts on that?
Yes, but not initially. I think maybe the last half an hour, I think they'll go to town on Hearts the weekend.
Does he start with Scales and Taylor, who were both good against Rangers?
I think he does. I think it's just, we're paying the price for players coming in late. I think both of those players will eventually be first team players by the end of the season. But I think it's just too soon. Scales is a fantastic defender. You know, see when his back's to the wall. That's why I thought it was a ridiculous decision to leave him out on Saturday against England, because you're going to be defending all day. He's an excellent defender. His problems start when he's got freedom of thought and freedom with the ball to run. That's not his forte. Taylor's just an experienced hand. We know he's at the top of his ability, and it just is what it is, kind of thing. And Bailly's been brought in to, I don't think just challenge that, but to improve upon that. Maybe Bailly, but I don't think Trusty just yet. Depends what CCV's situation is. I don't think he went away with America because Celtic were saying not fit and able. So it depends the situation there. But no, I think Scales and Taylor are likely to start. But I think the team that finishes on Saturday will be completely different. And I think it might even be a wee bit formationally experimental in terms of how you're going to change up at the midfield. Maybe go for the double pivot in the 6 and things like that.
Joe, just on that then, so do you think that we'll go with the same 11 against Rangers, which means a Taylor at left back, a Scales at left centre half, Kyogo up top instead of Adamida, who's also a new signing, for example. What do you think?
Of course, depends on fitness, because Taylor pulled out the Scotland squad, so you don't know whether, regardless of how well Taylor played against Rangers, we don't know if it'll be fit enough. And I suppose the experimentation will come with risk of, causing further injury to Taylor, causing further problems to Taylor.
I think he was just exhausted. I think he put it on the line in that game and he was just fatigued.
Possibly, but we pulled out the squad though, so and I don't think he was really expected to play a lot for Scotland anyway, so there could be we don't know, right? But for me personally, I want to destroy Hearts. I want to absolutely hammer them. I do, because I think
Naismith out.
Absolutely.
He's nearly done anyway.
They're second bottom of the table, I think.
Yeah,
I know, but it's just one of those ones. They might have an eye on Thursday. They've got a European game on the Thursday as well. I want to destroy them. I want to destroy everyone we play.
Naismith doesn't have the luxury of looking beyond 3 points on the board because he is very
Desperate.
close to the door.
He also knows that he can come away from Celtic Park losing 2-0 and keep his job. Losing 6 or 7-0, maybe not. And Celtic at this moment, they seem to be ruthless. But I think that's what you've got, Joe, is a squad full of competition and everybody wants to start every game. Adam Ida signed for a lot of money. He doesn't want to play second fiddle to Kyogo, or third fiddle is the term that you came up with. Likewise, Trusty, Baye, they're here to play games. Baye's only here for a season, doesn't want to spend the first part of it on the bench, so there's going to be real competition around Lennoxtown, and I think that in itself is really healthy. That's what kicks folks on. And people were saying that even we could have seen the early impact of that in terms of how Taylor and Skills played against Rangers. Celtic signed all their new guys on the Friday, including players for their positions, and they've maybe rocked up and said, well, listen, I may eventually lose the jersey. It's not going to be this week or the next.
I'll make it hard for you.
I think that'll come though. I mean, one interview I remember I was watching, it was with Barry Robson, and Barry Robson was talking about the challenges playing for Celtic of going from Tuesday to Saturday, Wednesday to Sunday, that balance of we need to go into every game. We could have a really, really tiring game in midweek, but we're playing on Saturday and we need to win. Like, full stop, we need to win. That's when a Valle or a Trusty or Scales vice versa will be required to step up, because we might not have a choice. And this is where it does become a squad game, that we need to use everything that we have available to us. But I think, I think that we will, I don't think we'll be in a position where this will be our team every week. We will experiment in the squad. I just think Saturday is too soon, because we have done an international break as well. Guys will have played during the international break with their own countries, whatever, and they'll be getting up to speed in their own way. Personally, though, I think Saturday we just need to win, get back to into a routine of playing the way we were, continue where we left off and all that. I think the best way of doing that is keeping it as consistent to what we were when we were actually doing that and winning.
It's a balancing act for the manager, though, isn't it? Because I think specifically with Baye, Trusty and Engels in mind, and Luke McCowan would argue his case as well, these guys have been brought into the club to help us compete better at a European level. So imagine Rodgers sticks with the same 11 v Hearts, we go and win comfortably. He starts with the same 11 against Bratislava and we draw. That's a disaster. These guys have been brought in to make us better in Europe. He could try that whole thing about being loyal, James, to the guys that have got him this far, and then we have an off night against Bratislava on Matchday 1 with Scales and Taylor etc in the lineup, Engels etc kicking their heels on the bench, and we draw one each. That would be a disaster.
I think, with all respect to Bratislava, if it was Dortmund away first game, I think that does influence things come Saturday. I think we've got an opportunity to not have to risk things, and we just use that wee bit of time before, when Dortmund away is not far away. But that just gives us time to get these boys up to speed. Now, who knows? They could be pulling up trees in training, and it's just so obvious that these guys have to start. We don't know that. But given that it's not the toughest game out of the fixture schedule, I think that gives us a wee bit of luxury to stick with Taylor and Scales going into these games, and then just bringing the changes after that.
I disagree. I think, I'm looking at this from the lens of, say if you're a Dundee or a Ross County, where if we had a game against Celtic on the Saturday away at Parkhead and we were playing against each other on the Wednesday, Dundee versus Ross County, that's your biggest game. I'm thinking that in the same way about a Dortmund and a Slovan Bratislava. That is our chance to pick up points. We should be thinking, albeit I'm sticking to my point that I still think we should go on Saturday, absolutely blow Hearts away whatever way possible. But the Slovan Bratislava game for me is a much more important game than the Dortmund game, in terms of that is our opportunity to say, right, we are here, we need to win. And more often than not, I'm looking at Bodo Glimt, for instance. We rested our team at home at Bodo Glimt because
I think we'd said focus in the league by that stage, though.
We did, but at the same time, there is a balancing act, and I absolutely agree. But I think, it's so important that we win that first game because that's his tone.
I agree, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the manager does in these next two lineups, because I think on paper, Slovan Bratislava at home should be your banker, based on everything else in the group. But you can't just presume they might turn up.
Yeah, but Rodgers doesn't go that way.
That's what I'm saying. You can't assume that they're going to turn up and
it's usually a downfall.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's a couple of good questions and certainly food for thought. So big thanks to Martin, to Sandy and to Old Bamboo for the questions this week. If you want us to cover your question on next week's show, then it couldn't be easier to do so. Just visit our website at thecelticexchange.com. Click the leave voicemail button that you'll see on every page of our site at the bottom right hand corner. Record your question and we could be featuring you in the show this time next week. Okay, let's take another short break. When we come back, we'll do this week's mystery goal scorer. Welcome back, folks. We'll begin the final section of this week's show, as always, with our Name the Goal Scorer feature. The rules, for anyone who doesn't yet know, very simple. We'll play a clip from a notable Celtic goal, but the goal scorer's name has been beeped out from the commentary, and all you have to do is name the goal scorer. Before we kick on, let's reveal the answer from last week's show.
Celtic are really going about their job here. Goal difference could be crucial. Here's the new boy coming through. Oh, he's done it! Cadete has scored! Jorge Cadete scores for Celtic. It's 5 goals to 0 here at Parkhead. 75 minutes gone. Jorge Cadete has only been in the field a few moments.
James, the goal in question, of course, came from Jorge Cadete. It was the 1st of April 1996 and a 5-0 win against Aberdeen on his debut. I'm not coming to Joe for his response because this is where he plays I wasn't born till year 2000 or what was it, 99? 99, just a kid.
I'd left Celtic by the time I was born. So,
so I'll fully focus on you, James, for your thoughts on Jorge Cadete.
What a player.
He was, eh?
What a player. Just, there was something about, obviously Van Hooydonk, Tino, Cadete, all the three together, but there was something about Cadete that just told us, this is post-takeover, obviously McCann's in charge, the stadium's getting built, all that stuff. It told us it's something, whilst it hadn't crystallised, something was changing and it wasn't going to be a flash in the pan thing. There was going to be real success at Celtic. And it took us a bit of time to get stability on that. It took us until the new cut came, really, to get stability on that. But it was a real marker. I remember being in a pub and a pal of my dad's came up and said, Celtic are going to sign this guy tomorrow and he's outstanding, blah, blah, blah. A guy, Noel, you'll know well. And obviously, that didn't happen tomorrow. It didn't happen for many tomorrows because the SFA did their thing. Yes. But they were raving about him from the minute one. And then we got him in. I saw that goal. I wasn't at the game. I saw that goal and I would be surprised if it was live, I think, according to the radio. But the highlights were on the same night, something like that. And the stand was bouncing and that kind of thing. So what a way to announce yourself on the stage and to keep delivering. Jock Brown speaks really highly of him in your interview with him this summer. Because he could get caught in the clump of three amigos and want more money, and it wasn't that, it was a domestic situation. His wife wanted to go home and all these things. So just somebody will always admire. A fantastic striker, lethal. Just that guy goes through one-on-one, more lethal than Larson even, I would say, and that's saying something in terms of one-on-one.
Yeah, just phenomenal striker. He had his troubles, but while he was here, he was so effective. I think he scored 38 goals overall for Celtic. He was here for just over a full season. Joe, did you catch any tales of him from your great-great-grandfather or anything of that
sort? VHS tapes you watch back and stuff?
The Clark ancestors fact told me about him. He came on at Parkhead last year and he started getting his own song going. I remember that, and I think he was wanting an encore. It's like 35,000 watching him. But yeah, I heard about him. My dad talking about him said it was brilliant. Obviously I've heard about the controversy around them, like a bit of delay with the registration, for whatever stupid reason they gave. But
we know the reasons.
Am I right in saying they only played together once? Was it the three of them?
Don't know the answer to that. We'll check out from a piece of trivia. But yeah, he was very much part of the three amigos: Pierre Van Hooydonk, Paolo Ricciano, and Jorge Cadete. When he left Celtic, he went on to play for Celta Vigo, Benfica, Bradford, and
Thistle.
Partick Thistle, amongst others.
I was born then.
The SFA situation, so it was Jim Farry, they caused a delay to his signing in early 96, meaning that he would unnecessarily miss 6 games for Celtic, including 2 against Rangers, 1 in the Scottish Cup, and Jim Farry would pay for that with his job for He was sacked, for gross misconduct. Some things never change and all that stuff. But we'll not get into that too much at this moment in time. But a great striker, a great Barnett, and it's just a shame that he couldn't stay a wee bit longer at Celtic. Okay, let's take a listen to this week's mystery goal scorer.
They need to get the ball in the box. Rogic, it's a good cross, it's a chance, it's a goal! Yeah! For Celtic in the 97th minute!
Give us the answer, Joe. 100%.
My main man.
Your main man, indeed.
I think it's the first time I've ever get that right in this show. I'm brilliant.
What a few days you're having.
As always, what we'll do, we'll beep that out and we'll reveal the answer in next week's show. We'll also share the clip on social media for anyone who wants to have a go there. To round off this week's show, it's a situation surrounding Celtic's academy. I read this morning that Barry Hepburn has been released by Bayern Munich and now finds himself without a club. Some may remember that Hepburn and Liam Morrison both left Celtic's academy to join Bayern Munich a few years ago. Morrison, a centre-back, joined them first in August 2019 before Hepburn, who's a forward, then followed suit in August 2020. Both were 16 years of age at the time. Morrison, as you may have seen, signed for QPR this summer, following a loan spell at Wigan. And as mentioned, Hepburn is now without a club and neither player made an appearance in Bayern Munich's first team. James, the point of all of that, it's not to take up any issues with the players themselves and hopefully both going to have good careers. But how can Celtic convince similarly talented youngsters that Celtic Park is the best place to be as they start to take their first steps as a pro footballer?
It's a multifaceted question. There's structural changes required in terms of how many youths any team can just stack into its academy, because that's just, it's wrong for the player, it's wrong for the game, it stifles development. I mean, those two boys could have been playing for Scotland yesterday, for example, if they'd had their development all the way through. Now, they've been at a Bayern academy, but without true competitive football, so they've been missing those years that a lot of other players have picked up. So I think structural first and foremost, and I'd like to see Celtic getting involved in that and influencing that debate and starting to make change and make headway and making change at least. Second of all, the predatory nature of agents in the game. They're advising these kids, and they are kids, that I can get you Bayern Munich, I can get you Man City, I can get you Liverpool. But it's best for the agent, it's not necessarily best for the player. It's really short term. Now, if you've got an agent that's looking at your career over a 15, 20 year period, then they will be thinking longer term with you and saying, well, I'm not going to make £1 million off you today, but I'll make 10 million off the next 15, 20 years. I don't think it's like that. I see agencies working really short term to short term targets. They've got a sales target to hit, and moving that player from Celtic to there gets them one step closer to hitting their target. And it's a really cynical world to be in. And I suppose third of all, and that's the bit we can control directly, is to keep showing the pathway. Now, there's a lot of work going on at Barrowfield to improve upon the lot for the youth and to give them a dedicated location. So you can't say Celtic are doing nothing in that regard, but we've then just got to keep showing the pathway. And I think Brendan Rodgers and Celtic both want to do that. I think it's difficult at the moment, but it's starting to get a wee bit easier as we're seeing. You've got Luke McCowan, who could easily have been, obviously he's more senior now, but he could easily have come through a Celtic Academy route. He's shown that he's good enough to play for Celtic as a Scottish local talent, a Celtic fan. So just showing that we do need players. For example, we desperately need a number 9 to come out of the academy just now and support the two main strikers. We don't have that. There's a pathway right there for a striker. So whatever it is in terms of the talents, maybe not just there at the moment, but there are opportunities going to present themselves because Celtic are playing so many games in expanded tournaments that we need that youth to bolster the squad, rather than bolstering it with guys on 10, 15, 20 grand a week and just bloating up the squad. Bolster it with, you're not in the first team, but it's, if a key player gets injured, then it's youth I'm bringing in, not an emergency loan signing. That's the way I see the solution for that.
And I think a lot of fans, Joe, would like to see that. There is a young number 9 coming through, Daniel Cummins, who I believe is the top kid in the B team just now. I think he scored a number of goals in the early part of the season so far, including 2 hat-tricks. But the question remains over that level at the Lowland League, is that the best prep for kicking guys into first team football? Brendan Rodgers though did mention that Rocco Vata has been primed to be that third youthful striker. Kyogo, Ida, and now there's a gap. Maybe it will be Daniel Cummins, maybe not, but I think most, if not every fan, would love to see a homebred talent coming through. You're right, James, it's important that we're making changes to the infrastructure at Barrowfield and that there's a state-of-the-art place for these kids to develop, but ultimately all they care about is when can I get to the first team, or how can I get to the first team? And that's the most important thing. Joe, I've mentioned the two examples there of Liam Morrison and Barry Hepburn, but the more recent examples that we're all familiar with, as I mentioned, is Rocco Vata and Daniel Kelly, who both now join Morrison in the English Championship at Watford and Millwall respectively. Ben Doak slightly different. He also left the club but to go to Liverpool, but now finds himself on loan at Middlesbrough. Do you think it's purely down to money, or maybe a mix of money and poor advice from agents that's led to these decisions, or for some reason has Celtic genuinely not been the best place for these kids to develop at this moment in time?
I think there's more than that, because I think there's a structure issue as well. Scotland's a country, I think, their attitude to youth development and the way that they structure their leagues, I think for a country our size is just completely wrong. I mean, I think it was just looking through live score, and I'm looking at Belgium. That Belgium have got Anderlecht's B team in their second league. Ajax are the same, PSV are the same. Countries of a similar size to us, they are not having a Celtic or a Rangers or a Hearts B team playing in their fifth tier. Now, it's not as easy as just to say, oh, by the way, we'll scrap two of those teams and we'll just plop Celtic.
Let them rise if they've got the talent to do so. So
there should be a pathway in place that I think they should. Now, the other side to that, the flip side to that as well, if the Celtic B were that good, they should be winning the Lowland League, which
they're certainly not.
They're not. So
Rangers have taken their team out of the Lowland, so it's just Celtic and Hearts that have got B teams in there now.
So that's a sign in itself. Now, if playing in that environment altogether isn't the solution, then obviously you need to find a way of getting these guys minutes. So you look at the success stories that we have had of people that have stayed, guys like Callum McGregor. Now, personally, I don't think a Callum McGregor scenario would be an easy breakthrough. I don't think that would be an easy breaking through into our team, because Callum McGregor came into our team, we were under Ronnie Dyler, where we weren't under a great deal of pressure. We were under it was qualifying for the Champions League, absolutely, that was a main priority, but we were going to win the league that year. There was no real desperate need to go and spend 4 or 5 million or 3 million on an alternative to Callum McGregor. The reality was that there was a vacancy there, and it was a lot of that was down to chance. And don't get me wrong, he's done great, Callum McGregor, but guys have left, like Ben Doak come on against Rangers. They actually come on against Rangers as a sub. Now at 16,
you're booked. As in he was tearing the place up.
So it's one of those ones where that guy get given the ultimate dream chance of playing for Celtic.
I actually thought that was a late and last throw of the dice to get him. I think Ange realised, and it's not Ange's job to identify Ben Doak, but I think he realised late in the day there was a serious danger of losing him, and they threw everything they had to get him to stay, i.e. play him against Rangers. He played the Dundee United game where Leah Labada scored the late winner as well.
Set it up.
And that's it. That was his 2 games for Celtic, and Liverpool had obviously been chapping the door by then. And by that point, it's too late. So what can we be doing beforehand, Joe? And this is a bigger question. Maybe we'll do a one-off show on this and try and get a couple of folk in that know what they're talking about. Not that we do.
I think that's the thing.
It's like you try not to say that.
But we'll get some folks, because there's no easy answers. Joe, I'm asking you lads, what do we do about it? There's no easy answers. There's so much to this situation, and there's a number of things. Celtic could do all the right things, and Liverpool and Bayern will still come calling, and some kids will still think, I can't say no to that. I was reading some of the quotes from, I think it was Liam Morrison at the time, and he just couldn't say no. So Celtic could have rolled out the red carpet, given them some really decent money, the same decent money they offered Rocco Vata and Daniel Kelly, and ultimately you might still lose these kids. But Celtic, as much as it sounds like I'm doing so, Celtic can't take that defeatist attitude. They need to say, what is every step we can take? What's every base we can cover to give ourselves the best possible chance of taking these kids through to at least a season or two at first team at Celtic, and then if they move on, then so be it. But at the moment, we're not even getting that from some.
No, we're not, and like say Rocco Vata and guys like that are going away at the earliest opportunity, it feels like. And I think that it's sad, because obviously, every player that's going to be in that academy, it will be their dream of playing for Celtic, and it will be. I know he'd referred to Luke McCowan. The loan spells are really important. We'll look at, I've just seen literally come in here today that was at Matthew Anderson, who was on loan at, is it Admira Wacker that are so he's been back there on loan, along with someone else, another youth player, can't remember, name escapes me, but it seemed like, I mean, if that guy is going back to that same club, I think he's 21, 22. He's not a really young guy. Where's the progression there?
That feels like a real step back. And he came out of that loan move with high praise. So that's disappointing.
It's not as if it was like, we'll give him another chance there. He actually was good there.
I do think if the alternative is kicking about playing against civil service strollers and whoever else is at that lowland level, then playing top level in Austria has got to be better than that.
Yeah, but should we as the club not be saying, right, here's what you achieved there, we're going to give you a different challenge here because you know that's comfy. Let's get you out of your comfort zone and learn something new. So I think it's been a wee bit lazy on everyone's part.
It's now Darren Adie's job. Darren Adie's got a job in that capacity to manage them. So
just on that, I'll recap on that. So generally speaking, I think at least the club have realised and recognised that the bridge between the academy and the first team isn't there just now. But the great, I keep going over this, the great examples of Calmac, Kieran Tierney, James Forrest, one or two others. There's somebody notable I'm missing, can't remember.
Ralston.
Maybe Ralston.
You're laughing at.
Right,
it's called international, Tino. It's called international.
But these guys are few and far between now. Calmac broke through under Ronnie Dyler. That was 2014, 10 years ago.
A long time ago.
KT kind of also similar time, maybe a year or two after. James Forrest broke through under Lenny. All that stuff 2010. Where's the guys in the interim? And they aren't there. In terms of Tony Ralston's, I admire everything that Tony Ralston does, but he's not a first team starter. He's not a first team regular. He's a squad player at this moment in time. And I think, as you rightfully say, Joe, Darren O'Dea's been brought in, so his role as professional player pathway manager, they've created a role, and it's not something that's going to click into place overnight, so we just need to see what happens. As I mentioned, James, though, if it's solely down to money, Celtic can't compete. So again, to that point, we need to make sure we're doing all the other things, and I do think one of the things we can do is be smarter in terms of the clubs we partner up with. The club in Austria might be a great fit for someone at this phase of their development, but then when they come back for that loan, is there an English Championship club or a team in the Netherlands or something? And I think that would be a really smart way of saying, we'll get you first team football for 2-3 seasons, and then if you develop in the way that we hope you do, then on season 3 you get your chance.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that is always accepted or appreciated by the player. Daniel Kelly was offered a pick of loan. Let's find a really well structured loan that's going to fit for you. He just had his heart set on moving, and that's fine. What I would say about the guys younger than that, the kind of, Lee Morrison and co that went to Bayern at that time, there's now ample evidence in the place to say, right, don't make that move because you won't get your game for them. And also sell them Celtic, This is a chance to do things that you can't, winning silverware, playing in Europe. You're not going to, all the best to Daniel Kelly, but that is not anywhere near successful football, so...
I was really surprised and disappointed by the moves that Vat and Kelly made, and it's the same as Morrison and Hepburn. You're disappointed from a fan point of view because you want to see these guys coming through, but you wish them no ill will. They're young
Not
people who make their decisions, rightly or wrongly, based on the advice around them. There'll be a lot of family advice, but I do believe there's a lot of poor agency advice as well, and who knows, as I say, we wish them the best, but the hope is that we start to get more of these kids realising that Celtic Park is the best place for their future. The next big hope, of course, is Francis Tully, who has signed a new deal, and let's see if he can break the recent trend and go on to be a first team regular. Joe, as we start to wrap things up, your final comments for the week.
I'm looking forward to getting, as I said earlier on, my Celtic back. I've missed it always does this international breaks, they just feel way longer than they actually are. But yeah, exciting times ahead. Champions League, I am very, very cautiously optimistic, but we'll stick with optimistic about the Champions League campaign. And yeah, I'm feeling good about things just now. Excited to see what the new guys can bring, and yeah, looking forward to times ahead.
And he's not mentioned that he's really keen, James, that we give Hearts an absolute tanking at the weekend. His balance just crept through a wee bit there. But James, last word of the week goes to you.
I've made the foolish error of being on a train on Saturday afternoon down to London. I think I get into London just after 3, so you might find me in the London number 1 heading to a birthday gig in somewhere south of London on the Saturday night. But Hearts, a game you just always... It's very easy to get yourself up for that. I believe that Naismith's quite a nice guy out of football. This isn't out of football, so what am I doing?
Yeah, I think it's one to look forward to, and I think there's a needle between Celtic and Hearts, and it's a nice game for everyone to come back to. So that wraps things up on this latest Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to James and Joe, and thanks to you for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday with the Countdown to Kick-Off show ahead of Celtic v Hearts at Celtic Park on Saturday. And remember to check out the CelticExchange.supercast.com to help us bring you even more Celtic this season. But in the meantime, as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.